Lesson number 56. Nanach, nachman, on the day of the first fruit offering, when you bring a meal offering from the new grain. To God on your festival of Shvios, you shall have a mikra kodesh convocation to holiness. You shall do no work of mundane needs. Number one, in every Jew there is an aspect of malchus, royalty. Each one according to his level possesses an aspect of royalty. One person may rule in his home, while another may have a greater realm of dominion. And then there is one who rules the entire world, each one according to the level of royalty that he possesses. As in officers of thousands, officers of hundreds, officers of 50s, and officers of 10s. Now this aspect of royalty that each one possesses is both manifest and hidden. Manifestly, it is the dominion, it is the dominion that each one has according to his level is ruling over certain people in a manifest way, according to the aspect of his royalty, but it is also in a hidden way. For each one according to his level of royalty also possesses an aspect of royalty in a hidden way. That is manifestly it seems that he has no dominion over these people. Nevertheless, in a very hidden and mysterious way he does rule over them. This is because their souls are subordinate and deferent to him. This is because their souls are subordinate and deferent to him. This hidden aspect of royalty is also according to each one's level, as in officers of thousands, officers of hundreds, etc. And then there is someone who manifestly has absolutely no dominion. Yet in a very hidden and mysterious way, he rules over the entire generation, even over all the tzaddikim of the generation. For all their souls are below his rule and royalty, and they are all deferent and responsible to him. However, this is in a very mysterious way, as in all places incense is offered and brought to me. Though they worship idols, nevertheless, in a very mysterious way, they are all deferent to God and serve him, only in a very mysterious way. Similarly, this aspect of hidden royalty, though manifestly this person has absolutely no dominion, nevertheless in a very mysterious way, he rules over everyone, and they are all subordinate and deferent to him. Number two now, one must not use one's aspect of royalty only for one's own benefit and purposes. The royalty must not be used as one's slave to fill one's desires. Rather, the royalty must be in the category of a free man, as in, fortunate are you, a country whose king is a free man. Your royalty must be a free man and not be used for your own benefit. This is alluded to in bezH, as in mordroir, alluding that the malchus, the morus, dominion, the royalty has dror, freedom and liberty. For it is not being used for one's benefit and purposes, but only for God's sake, as in royalty will be God's. That is, one must use royalty in the service of God, warning and rebuking all the souls under one's dominion, each one according to the level of royalty that one possesses, both manifestly and in a hidden way. If one rules in one's home, one must exhort and rebuke the members of one's household. And if one has greater dominion, it is incumbent upon one to exhort more and more people according to the level of royalty one possesses. According to the level of royalty one possesses. Lesson number 3. Part 3 now, one must draw longevity into royalty. Now, one must draw longevity into royalty so that it is not in the category of a position of power, but buries its owner. This is because each person, according to the level of royalty one possesses, is in the category of a watchman, upon whom it is incumbent to exhort and rebuke the people, upon one whom it is incumbent to exhort and rebuke the people who are from one's roots, upon whom one has dominion. If one exhorts and rebukes them, one is fulfilling one's obligation and saves one's soul, as written, I have made you a watchman for the house of Israel. And if you exhort the wicked, and he does not repent from his wickedness, he will die in his sin, while you have saved your soul. However, if one does not exhort and rebuke them, one is punished for this. This is why one must draw longevity and to royalty, so that one is able to exhort and rebuke them. But how is it possible for one to warn and rebuke others, when one does not know what they need, and they are not near one, for one to rebuke them? For this one requires das, experiential knowledge, experiential knowing. In order to know how to rebuke them, acquiring this das, though, also requires longevity. As people say, he doesn't know from his own life. As people say, he doesn't know from his own life, for das comes from life, from longevity. Nanach, nachma, meuman. Now attaining longevity comes through torah study, for the Torah is the name of the transcendent, infinite one. For the Torah is the name of the transcendent, infinite one. Thus, just as when one needs to call upon someone, one calls upon him by his name. Similarly, when we need to call upon the ground of all life in order to draw from it life and longevity, one must call upon it by its name, so to speak, and its name is the Torah. Thus, just as when one needs to call upon someone, one calls upon him by his name. Similarly, when we need to call upon the ground of our life, in order to draw from it life and longevity, one must call upon it by its name, so to speak, and its name is the Torah. Hence, by way of Torah study, we evoke longevity, timelessness, infinite days. Therefore, a king is urged regarding Torah study more than all others, for he must invoke longevity into the royalty. This is the meaning of what is written in the section of the king. The Torah scroll shall be with him, and he shall read from it all the days of his life, so that his dynasty will have longevity. He shall read from it all the days of his life, from it, meaning that through Torah study he calls upon life, as said the days of his life, his life. For when receiving life, one must receive it in measure, for without measure and restraint, it is impossible to receive life from God. Due to the abundance of light, since too much oil douses the candle, therefore one must receive life with measure, which is attained by way of Torah study. This is because the Torah is the name of the transcendent infinite one, and a name is the vessel for any object. For the name contains the life force of that object, as written, a living creature is its name. For a name contains the soul and life force of each object. Therefore, when we call upon a person by his name, he is immediately available to us. For the name contains his entire soul and life force. Similarly, the Torah is the name of the transcendent infinite one, meaning that the life force of the ground of all life is contained within it. This is because the Torah is an aspect of measures. For the Torah contains letters, words, sentences. Letters, words, sentences, chapters, and sections, which are aspects of measures with which the life force is contained within measure. Therefore, through the Torah, an aspect of measures, which is the name of the transcendent, infinite one can receive the life force. For with the Torah, we are calling upon life and drawing the life force into the measures, represented by days. This is the meaning of what is the measure of my days. This is the Torah, which corresponds to what? As written, what are the testimonies, statutes and laws? Through it we call the life force into the measures and the days, for we could otherwise not receive the life force, due to an abundance of light. This is, he shall read from it all the days of his life, meaning that by way of the Torah he calls the life force into the days and the measures as said. For this reason, the Torah must be studied orally. For when one wants to call someone by name, one must call him orally, for one cannot call him with thought alone. Similarly, it is impossible to call the ground of all life by name other than orally, and not merely in thought. This is the meaning of what our sages said. The words of Torah are life to moitzueihem. Those who find them, to moitzueihem, those who express them with the mouth, specifically to those who express them with the mouth, for that is how one attains life. Hence we draw longevity through Torah study. And then we can attain das, for das and intelligence are themselves the life force. As written, wisdom gives life to its owner. Since intelligence is the essence of life, then through das, one is able to attract and rebuke those who need to be rebuked. And there are two types of concealments when God is hidden behind a single concealment. This itself makes it hard enough to find him. Nevertheless, when he is hidden behind a single concealment, it is still possible to toil and search until one finds him, since one knows that God is hidden from oneself. However, when God is hidden behind concealment, within concealment, that is, the concealment itself is hidden from a person, and one is not aware at all that God is hidden from oneself. Then it is totally impossible to find him, since one is not even aware of his presence. This is alluded to in I will aster, hide in double verb form, meaning I will aster, hide the haster hiddenness, so that people will not realize that all that God is hidden therein. One can certainly not search for God, since one is not even aware that one must search for him. Since one does not realize that he is hidden, for the concealment itself is concealed. But nevertheless, despite all concealments, even in the concealment of the concealment, God is certainly enclosed there. God is certainly enclosed there. There is certainly nothing that does not contain God's life force, for without his life force it could not have any existence. Therefore, in all things and in all deeds and in all thoughts, God himself, so to speak, is enclosed, even if one sins and acts against God's will. Nevertheless, there too can be found God's life force, albeit in great concealment and constriction. Now the torah is the life force of all things. Hence the torah is enclosed, even in thought, speech, or action of sin, though in great concealment and constriction. In multiple concealments, our sage said, if a person sins and repeats the sin, it becomes for him like something permissible. Meaning that through one's sins, one transforms the words of the living God and makes different letter combinations in the torah, until what had been forbidden is now permissible, as in, woe to those who call evil good and good evil. Hence God's life force is enclosed even within sins, that is, the letters of the torah. Although it is hidden, that is, with one's sins, one has transmuted the letter combinations of the torah to invert the forbidden into the permissible. If a person sins and repeats the sin, it becomes for him like something permissible. This is the first concealment. When God is hidden from a person in a single concealment, it is difficult enough to find him, since the act has already become for one like something permissible. Nevertheless, one can toil and search until one finds him. Seventh, while one still realizes that the forbidden act has become only like something permissible, therefore the God is concealed from the person, and the sins are now perceived as something permissible. Nevertheless, it is possible for a person to reflect in his heart that he has fallen into the category of it, becomes like something permissible. One can then beg and search until one emerges from this, since one still knows that it has become only like something permissible. But no, there is also concealment within concealment. This is when the concealment itself is concealed, that one is not aware at all that God is hidden from one. One does not realize at all that it is only one's perception of the forbidden that has been transformed into something permissible, but perceives all evil as completely acceptable. This means that once one continues to sin after the initial repetition, the very knowledge that the sin has become for him like something permissible is hidden from him, and one is totally unaware that any misdeed is involved. As far as one is concerned, anything goes. This is the category of concealment within concealment. That the concealment itself is concealed, however, even in the concealment within concealment, even there is God, the letters of the torah hidden. For nothing could exist otherwise. Profuse sins, though, have transformed Torah wisdom in one's eyes into foolishness, to the point at which one is completely unaware that this transformation into the permissible has happened. This is the concealment within concealment. Therefore, these concealments must be uncovered. This is done by drawing longevity into royalty, which corresponds to das, knowledge. With this knowledge, one is able to know that even within the concealment itself, even in the concealment within concealment, even there, God, the Torah, is enclosed. And since one is aware that even in the concealments is God, this itself uncovers the concealments and creates Torah. Even from the concealment within concealment is Torah created. For indeed, God, the Torah, is enclosed even there. However, the very fact that one was not aware that God was enclosed there is itself an aspect of concealment. But as soon as one becomes aware that God is hidden there, this itself transforms the concealment within concealment and makes it into knowledge. And the Torah that had been concealed from the person is transformed into knowledge. Since one now knows that God was hidden there, and now that the concealment within concealment has been transformed into knowledge and made into Torah, the Torah itself rebukes people. As in, the Torah declares before them, until when, O fools, will you love foolishness? But the truth is that the Torah is always declaring, crying out, and rebuking, declaring, crying out, and rebuking. As written, she calls out in the most bustling places, until when, O fools, when you love foolishness? It is only that one does not hear the voice of this rebuke due to the concealments. But after the concealments are uncovered and transformed by way of this knowledge into Torah, then as soon as they have become Torah, the Torah itself rebukes people and says, until when, O fools? Nanach, nachma, meuman. Nanach, nachma, meuman. This is the meaning of she opened her mouth with wisdom, meaning that through the above wisdom and knowledge, through which the concealments were uncovered and transformed into Torah, she opens her mouth. This refers to the Torah that calls out to people, for the Torah itself opens its mouth and rebukes them. Hence, through Torah study, through which longevity is drawn into royalty, for through it one draws the life force into days and measures. One merits knowledge, as said. Through this one can rebuke even those very far from God, who are in the category of concealment within concealment. This is the meaning of every single day. Mordechai walked before the courtyard of the bezH. Mordechai represents royalty. Mordechai represents royalty. Every single day represents the Torah, through which the life force is drawn into days and measures. The courtyard of the bezH house represents the outer and the inner thoughts and speech, in all of which is hidden God, even in the thoughts and speech of those very distant from God. This is the meaning of the courtyard of the bezH nashim, of the bezH nashim, from the root of nashu, slipped and jumped away from omnipresent. From the root of nashu, slipped and jumped away from the omnipresent and became distant from God. And there are those who had been somewhat close to God but forgot about Him. In this case, nashu means forgetting, as in, God has nashani made me forget, for they have already forgotten God. And there are those who still now remember God, and there are those who still now remember God. But their strength has nashu so become weakened, and they are unable to overcome their inclinations. The term nashim thus refers to these three categories. They nashu and jumped, they forgot, or they lost their strength. They nashu had jumped, They forgot they nashu had jumped. They forgot they nashu and jumped. They nashu and jumped. They nashu and jumped. They forgot. They nashu and jumped. They nashu and jumped. They nawashu and jumped. They forgot. Or they lost their strength on account of any of these. They became distant from God, and God became concealed from them in the above concealments. But Mordechai represents royalty. He is able to rebuke and warn them by way of torah study, which corresponds to days and measures, through which one attains knowledge, through which one uncovers the concealment within concealment, and makes it into torah. Then the torah calls out to them. This is the meaning of to know Esther's welfare, through which one transforms the concealment within concealment, which is an aspect of Esther, Hastar, Aster, into knowledge. And this is the meaning of what will become of her. That is, one transforms the concealment into what? Which is Torah has written. What are these testimonies? The very fact that one is aware that God is hidden within the concealment, within concealment, is itself transformed into knowledge, which is the Torah. And then the Torah calls out to people. This itself is the aspect of the rebuke, that one must exhort and rebuke, for one causes with the knowledge that the Torah rebukes people. If one causes with the knowledge that the Torah rebukes people, through this rebuke one draws longevity into royalty. One draws longevity into royalty, so that a position of power will not bury its owner, which is when one does not rebuke people over whom one has dominion, but through the Torah study, through which one draws life and longevity. Corresponding knowledge until the Torah calls out to people and rebukes them. One has fulfilled one's obligation to rebuke, then a position of power and royalty do not harm a person. For one has drawn longevity into the royalty by way of rebuke. Hence through longevity, which corresponds by way of rebuke, hence through longevity, which corresponds to the knowledge that one draws through the Torah. Hence through longevity, which corresponds to the knowledge that one draws through the Torah. To this itself one draws longevity into royalty. Nachma, meuman, number 4. But no, the Torah enclosed within the concealment, within concealment is a very high Torah, the mysteries of the Torah. This is because it has to become enclosed in such lowly places amongst those who have sinned greatly to the point of its being hidden from them within a concealment. Within concealment, God thus arranged that the simple levels of Torah not be enclosed there, so that the klipos not be able to derive too much sustenance from there, which would cause very great harm. Thus he hides and encloses specifically this sublime Torah, the mysteries of the Torah, which is God's own Torah, so that the klipos shall not be able to derive much sustenance from there. This is alluded to in, I will pass through the land of Egypt. I am not an angel, I am not a messenger, I am God and another. And for the land of Egypt was a place infested with klipos, and therefore specifically there is God himself, that is God's own Torah, enclosed and hidden. Therefore specifically from the concealment within concealment, when it is transformed into knowledge, does God's own Torah come about. For God's Torah, the mysteries of the Torah are hidden there. Toiras Hashem temimeh. Toiras Hashem number 5, contraposing the malchus royalty of holiness is the malchus of evil, which is the malchus of Haman Amalek. As written, first among peoples is Amalek. They contrapose each other, for the malchus of holiness corresponds to the last of all the camps, as written, in the end, after all is considered, fear God, which represents royalty, government, as in, if not for the fear of malchus. In other words, the malchus of holiness corresponds to, in the end, to the last of all the camps of holiness, represented by the camp of dawn, which is the last of all the camps. For the din law of the malchus government is the law. For the din law of the malchus government is the law. The malchus of evil, on the other hand, gathers money, since it fears that what it has engorged in its mouth will be taken away from it, specifically the sparks of holiness that are in its possession. Therefore it endeavors to amass money, which is the sparks of holiness, which corresponds to the supernal colors embodied within gold, silver, and copper, which are types of money. This represents the lust for wealth, which corresponds to the malchus of evil. Therefore, Amalek, which is the malchus of evil, pursues the camp of dawn, which represents the malchus of holiness. As written, they cut off the stragglers and did not fear God, meaning when they were lacking the power of the malchus of holiness. When they were lacking the power of the malchus of holiness, which corresponds to the fear of God. This is because the malchus of Haman Amalek contraposes the malchus of holiness, since the malchus of holiness corresponds to the gatherer of all the camps of holiness, whereas the malchus of Haman Amalek, which is the malchus of evil, corresponds to the gatherer of money, since it intensifies its lust for money in order to grab all the sparks of holiness. Nevertheless, this will not help it, for the malchus of holiness, corresponding to Mordechai, has the power to extract all the money from it, and all the sparks of holiness that it swallowed. This is the meaning of what our sages said. To the person who is worthy, literally good in his eyes, has he given wisdom and knowledge. This is Mordechai. That is Mordechai representing the malchus of holiness, was given wisdom and knowledge that's good in his eyes. Corresponds to the torah, for there is no good other than the torah. On the other hand, to the sinner, he has given an interest to amass and collect. This is Haman. For Haman, representing the malchus of evil, is a gatherer of money. Thus the verse concludes to hand it over to the one who is worthy, good before God, corresponding to the torah. For Mordechai, who corresponds to the malchus of holiness, extracts all the money and sparks from him, and this is transformed into torah. For Mordechai extracts all the wealth from him, as in, he swallowed chayil wealth and vomited it up, transforming it into torah, which is called a woman of chayil. Number 6, now as knowledge increases, sustenance becomes easier to obtain, because sustenance is dependent upon knowledge. As written, the people of Shatu went about and gathered the manna with shtusa, foolishness. For the more one is lacking in knowledge, the more one must toil and work hard to attain one's sustenance. Peace also increases in line with an increase in knowledge, because peace is also dependent upon knowledge, as written, a wolf will dwell with a sheep, for the earth will be filled with knowledge. There will be wondrous peace in the world, so that two opposites will be able to dwell together on account of the great knowledge that will exist at that time. Through knowledge, peace increases, for anger and cruelty are eliminated. For anger and cruelty are eliminated. For anger and cruelty are eliminated by way of knowledge. Since anger and cruelty arise from a lack of knowledge, as written, anger lies in the lap of fools. Thus the greater the increase in knowledge, the greater is the increase of compassion and peace. Therefore sustenance will be easy, as in, who sets peace at your borders and satiates you with the cream of wheat. Number 7, this corresponds to Shavuos. Shavuos represents very great and exalted intelligence. Shavuos represents very great and exalted intelligence, which is sublime kindness and abundant compassion. For the abundance of compassion is dependent upon the increase of knowledge. Thus at the Torah giving, God appeared to them as an old sage filled with compassion. An old sage possesses composure, upon which is dependent the abundance of compassion. Therefore Shavuos, upon which is dependent the abundance of compassion. Therefore Shavuos represents sublime kindness and abundant compassion. This is the concept of the mikveh, ritual immersion of Shavuos, corresponding to the mikveh of the 50th gate, which is the highest gate of the 50 gates of Bina, is brought in the Kabbalistic intentions for Shavuos. This corresponds to the supernal intelligence and knowledge, corresponding to the aforementioned sublime kindness and abundant compassion. Hence the mikveh rescues from all troubles, as written mikveh hope of Israel is its savior at times of trouble. For it is a sublime kindness that rescues from all troubles. Thus the mikveh purifies from all impurities. As written, I will sprinkle pure water upon you, and you will be purified from all your impurities, for there is no suffering without sin. So the mikveh, which rescues from all troubles and suffering, is what purifies from all impurities and all sins. So the mikveh which rescues from all troubles and suffering is what purifies from all impurities and all sins. This corresponds to the mana, which corresponds to the mikveh of the 50th gate, which represents great knowledge. For the mana represents knowledge. This is alluded to in an open statement, extended faithfulness. An open statement is an aspect of the manifestation of knowledge, as in from his mouth our knowledge and understanding. From his mouth our knowledge and understanding. And in Egypt, when knowledge was in exile, as in I did not allow them to know me by my name. Yid Kevavke, speech was also in exile, as in difficulty speaking and difficulty expressing myself. When they left Egypt, though, and knowledge left exile, speech also left and was opened, as in an open statement, meaning that speech was opened and knowledge was revealed. Nanach, nachman, meuman. Nanach, nachman, meuman. And then by way of the manifestation of knowledge, God's faithfulness spread. By way of the manifestation of knowledge, God's faithfulness spread. God's faithfulness spread. And it became known that He is faithful to His promises and fulfills them. This is an aspect of extended faithfulness, meaning that His faithfulness was extended. This is an aspect of extended faithfulness, simple faithfulness, meaning that His faithfulness was extended. In Egypt, though, where knowledge was in exile, His faithfulness was not extended. His faithfulness was not extended or revealed. Which is why Rashi comments, I did not allow them to know me by my name Yikevavke. I was not known by my true nature, for since knowledge was not manifested in Egypt, His faithfulness was also not manifested. For kindness is dependent upon knowledge, as said. This is alluded to. Anoichi, brackets and God, etc., the opening of the 10 Commandments. Anoichi, Yehivo, Kesivo, Nemonim, Amarehu. Anoichi, Yehivo, Kesivo, Nemonim. Given in writing are her faithful words. For by way of the Torah giving, speech was opened, and knowledge was manifested, by way of which his faithfulness was spread. This is Nemanim Amureu, or faithful words. corresponding to extended faithfulness. An open statement, and this is represented by mon, the acronym of mama, no, nachman. A faithful statement as in an open statement, extended faithfulness. For the mana represents great knowledge. For the mana represents great knowledge, therefore the Israelites ate the manna for 40 years, because 40 years old to attain understanding. Because 40 years old to attain understanding. Nach, nachma, nachman, meuman, nanach, nachman, nanach, nachman, meuman, nanach, nachman, nanach, nachman, meuman. By number 8, this is the meaning of what our sages said. They ate the manna for 40 years, but was it not only 40 years, less 30 days? However, the bread that they took out of Egypt tasted like the manna, for indeed the manna which represents knowledge should have been eaten for 40 full years, since 40 corresponds to understanding and knowledge. As said, so as soon as they left Egypt and knowledge was manifested, they should have eaten the manna. To this the sages reply, the bread that they took out of Egypt, which was the matzah, tasted like the manna. This is because peace is dependent upon knowledge, and dissent is the opposite of knowledge. However, there is a dispute for the sake of heaven, which is indeed a very great knowledge, even greater than the knowledge of peace. This dispute is in fact great love and peace, as our sages said. We have the sufa, the saif, ultimately they will come to love ahav each other. Ultimately they will come to love ahav each other. Thus our sages said, a dispute for the sake of heaven will ultimately endure. For in fact, it is love ultimately endures, an aspect of love, as in Vahav, Vesufa, this corresponds to Moses, for Moses represents knowledge, which corresponds to dispute for the sake of heaven. Therefore Moses is the acronym of Machloikis, the dispute of Shammai Hillel, or Machloikis Shammai Hillel, the dispute of Shammai Hillel, who personified dispute for the sake of heaven, and therefore the redemption from Egypt came through Moses. For the essence of redemption is through knowledge, as in, you shall know that God took you out, and so that they know. This is represented by dough, by the matzah that they took out from Egypt. Matzah represents dispute, as in ma'oi, as in matzu secho, those who contend with you shall be like not. Matzu secho, those who contend with you shall be like not. Matzu secho, those who contend with you shall be like not. And this is the meaning of the bread that they took out of Egypt, that they took out for in Egypt. Knowledge was in exile, and there was certainly no dispute for the sake of heaven, since this is dependent upon knowledge, as said. Thus the bread that they took out of Egypt, that is the matzah, corresponding to dispute that they took out of Egypt, where knowledge was in exile, had the taste of manna. For after they took the aspect of dispute out of exile in Egypt, it had the taste of manna, which is great knowledge, corresponding to dispute for the sake of heaven. This is the meaning of lechem, bread from heaven. Stated regarding manna, lechem is from the root of milchama, battle, as in lecham. Lecham, battle. Oh yes, loichamoi, battle my opponents. An aspect of dispute, thus the mana, which is knowledge, corresponds to dispute for the sake of heaven. Therefore, Dasan and Aviram, who disputed Moses, who was knowledge, blemished the mana and left some of it over till the next day. For the mana corresponds to knowledge, which is represented by Moses. This is the meaning of what is stated in the Holy Zohar. The matzah is healing, for matzah represents dispute for the sake of heaven. An aspect of knowledge, of peace, of healing. For peace is healing, as in peace, peace. For the far and the near, says God, and I will heal them. This is because illness is essentially a lack of peace, a dispute between the elements. When one element overwhelms another, peace then is healing. For this reason, matzah is called bread of poverty, for there is no poverty other than that of knowledge, which corresponds to illness, as in, why do you look so poor, O prince? But matzah is healing since it is the bread of poverty, meaning that it is a healing for poverty. Number 9, but to attain dispute for the sake of heaven, one must refine and purify the heavens, so that they are not in the category of I clothe the heavens in darkness. Now, refining and purifying the heavens is accomplished with a sincere sigh, This is because the pulsating spirit is in the heart from the early stages of embryonic development, carrying upon it all the fluids, bloods, and essences. Thus, this pulsating spirit circulates. This pulsating spirit circulates and beats in all the organs, and by way of its circulating and blowing through them, it shakes, and by way of its circulating and blowing through them, it shakes, blows, and blows out and breaks, blows out, and breaks up any staleness, moldiness, any staleness that is in them, so that they do not become sickly and malfunctioning. This is just like the wind that blows over the ocean, breaking and blowing and churning, and mixing the waters so that they do not turn stale and putrid. The main movement of the pulse is in the hands, for since the hands are always in motion, there is a greater need to blow through them and break up any staleness. Therefore, when the doctor places his hand on the pulse, he can know everything about the ill person, for there in the hands is the main flow of the heart's pulse, upon which is carried all the information. This pulsating spirit, though, must circulate in a stable, orderly, and regular fashion. In a stable, orderly, and regular fashion. But there is a serpent that causes a saddened spirit, corresponding to the 39 mundane works, which are the filth of the serpent, which causes the saddened spirit. On account of the saddened spirit, the pulsating spirit does not beat regularly. This causes the limbs to become heavy. This causes the limbs to become heavy, since the pulsating spirit is not blowing through them regularly. Then the hands are in the category of Moses' hands were heavy, for heaviness is mainly in the hands, for that is where the pulsating spirit is mainly manifested. This corresponds to the sadness of hands, for the saddened spirit harms mainly the hands. But when the limbs are heavy, they weigh down even more on the pulsating spirit, and it becomes even weaker. The further weakened pulse then causes the limbs to weaken even further, and the weakened limbs then cause the pulsating spirit to weaken even further, and so on, until one dies by sighing, though one brings the pulsating spirit back to life and health. and is spared from the saddened spirit. The pulsating spirit then blows regularly through all the limbs, especially the hands. Through this one purifies the heavens. The hands correspond to the Shemaim heavens, Aish fire, and Mayim water, which correspond to the right hand and the left hand. And this is the meaning of, let us lift our hearts to our hands, to God in heaven, that one must elevate the hearts, which is the pulsating spirit, and the hearts to the hands, as said. Hands to God in heaven, for this causes the heavens to be refined. This also corresponds to, for I will lift my hand to the heaven. The hands must be lifted up to the category of the heaven. And when the hands, the heaven, are refined through sighing, by way of which one lifts the spirit in the heart to the hands, which refines the hands and the heaven. The aspect of dispute for the sake of heaven has been attained. This is because all speech is received from heaven, for all speech is there, as in, forever, O God, does your word stand in the heaven. This speech that is received from the heaven is received through the thunder, as in God thunders in heaven, and as in God thunders wondrously with his voice. Hence words are received from the hands, for they correspond to the heaven, which contain all speech. So the receiving is mainly through thunder, which corresponds to the pulsating spirit, that was rectified by way of a sigh, which elevates the hands to the heaven. This is because the pulsating spirit that circulates, blowing and breaking up everything, is mainly in the hands, which correspond to thunder. As in God thunders in heaven, for the hands correspond to the heaven, as said, all speech is there, as in, forever, O God, your word stands in the heaven, and hence all speech is received from the hands. This is alluded to in, as God spoke in the hand of Moses. Written about Moses and other prophets, all speech is there, and that is from where speech is received. Now the recipient of any words that are received from there, from the aspect of the hands, the heavens, thunder, should not be derided, even if the ruling is not according to his opinion, since he nevertheless received it from heaven. Therefore, indeed, both opinions are the word of the living God. The reason why the ruling is not according to his opinion is impossible for us to understand or grasp. For this is in the category of thunder, from where he received the words about which is said, God thunders wondrously with his voice. They are indeed the wonders of the perfect in knowledge. They are indeed the wonders of the perfect in knowledge. And it is impossible for us to understand it. This is in the category of God's ways that we cannot understand, as with one righteous person having it good, while another righteous person suffers, or one wicked person having it good, while another wicked person suffers. Even Moses was unable to understand this, and about this he begged God, please teach me your ways. A righteous person who has it good corresponds to the tzaddik whose opinion is the ruling, and the righteous person who suffers corresponds to the tzaddik whose opinion is not the ruling. The wicked person who has it good corresponds to the wicked person who becomes close to a tzaddik whose opinion is the ruling, and the wicked person who suffers corresponds to the wicked one who becomes close to a tzaddik whose opinion is not the ruling. Even Moses was unable to understand this, for they are God's ways, represented by thunder, which are the wonders of the perfect in knowledge that cannot be understood. Therefore, when one receives words from heaven, from the aspect of hands of thunder, one should not be derided, even if the ruling is not according to his opinion, for this is in the category of a dispute for the sake of heaven. Both opinions are the word of the living God, but it is impossible to understand this, because it is the wonders of the perfect in knowledge represented by thunder. This is the meaning of, with his spirit he cleared the heavens, his hand formed the bold serpents. These are just the tip of his ways. How infinitesimal is what we have. How infinitesimal is what we have heard about him, who can fathom the thunder of his mighty deeds. With his spirit he cleared the heavens. Represents the pulsating spirit that blows in the hands, which correspond to the heaven. Thus, with his spirit he cleared the heavens, for through the pulsating spirit one refines and clears the heavens, which corresponds to the hands. As in, let us lift our hearts to the hands, to God in heaven. Thus his hand chalul formed the bold serpents, thus creating a chalul. Thus creating a chalul, empty space in the hands, which had been heavy and clogged due to the saddened spirit, which is the filth of the serpent. Then when one eliminates the filth of the serpent, the pulsating spirit blows in an orderly fashion. Then the hands are lifted and heaven is refined. One can then receive words from them corresponding to dispute for the sake of heaven, which corresponds to God's ways, for indeed both opinions are the words of the living God. These are just the tip of his ways, represents God's ways, as in the tzaddik who has it good, etc., which cannot be understood, represented by thunder, which is the wonders of the perfect in knowledge. This is how infinitesimal is what we have heard about him, who can fathom the thunder of his mighty deeds. Meaning that there is nothing desirable, there is nothing derisable in the words that are received from heaven, and one should not deride the recipient, even if the ruling is not according to his opinion, for this is an aspect of God's ways, corresponding to thunder that cannot be understood or grasped. So this is how infinitesimal, meaning that there is nothing derisable about them, even if the ruling is not according to his opinion, for who can fathom the thunder of his mighty deeds? Who can understand the thunder of God's might, which is the wonders of the perfect in knowledge, as in God thunders wondrously with his voice? For indeed both are the words of the living God, only that it is impossible to grasp them, since this is an aspect of God's ways. This is the meaning of, on the day of Abikurim, the first fruit offering, this corresponds to royalty, as in I will also appoint him a bezH in context to the highest authority, exalted above the kings of the earth. When you bring a meal offering from the new grain to God, corresponds to the new torah, God's torah that is created through the above aspect of royalty. On your festival of Shavuos, represents knowledge, mana, the mikvah of Shavuos, which is the mikvah of the 50th gate. For this reason, Shavuos is referred to as a tzedis in the sense of royalty, as in this one, King Shaul Yatzor will rule over my people. You shall have a mikra kodesh, convocation to holiness, corresponds to the Holy Spirit, corresponding to the pulsating spirit. This means that one must call upon holiness, which corresponds to the pulsating spirit, in order to be spared from the filth of the serpent, from the 39 mundane works, from the saddened spirit. You shall do no mundane work in order to eliminate the filth of the serpent. The 39 mundane works, the sadness of the hands, as written, this one will console us from our toil and from the sadness of our hands, in the context of what was said above. Lesson number 57, Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma's students asked him, when will the sign of David arrive? He answered them, when this gate of Aram falls and is rebuilt, falls and is rebuilt, and falls again, but before there is time to rebuild it, the sign of David will arrive. Number one, know from every single word that comes out of God's mouth is created an angel. Now each and every word splits into many sparks, as in like a hammer that shatters a rock, and the number of angels created is equal to the amount of sparks, while from the original word that contains all the sparks is created an angel, who is the ruling leader of the angels, created from the individual sparks, and they are his armies. Nanach, nachma, nachman.